Two white officers thought they had found an easy target, a black man, alone, driving through the city on a bright afternoon asterisk. They didn't stop him for speeding. They didn't stop him for reckless driving. They stopped him for one reason only, because of the color of his skin with flashing lights and stern voices. They believed they had control, but the man behind the wheel wasn't nervous, wasn't shaking, wasn't afraid. He was calm. Too calm, they searched his car, demanded answers, pushed harder, desperate to find something, anything, to justify their actions. But what they didn't know was that this man wasn't just another driver. When the truth came out, it hit them harder than any weapon could, because in his pocket was the one thing that would end their authority forever, a federal badge shining in the sunlight and in broad daylight. Their power disappeared. The sun was high, the streets alive with weekday traffic people. Walked their dogs, kids played in yards, and cars hummed along as Officer Daniels spotted a silver sedan moving just a little. Too carefully, not speeding, not reckless. Just slow, suspiciously slow, Daniels narrowed his eyes. People who drive like that usually have something to hide. He flicked on his lights. Red and blue flashed across a sunny street. The sedan hesitated, then eased onto the shoulder of the driver, a middle-aged man in a pressed shirt, sat perfectly still, both hands on the wheel to everyone else watching. It looked like nothing more than a normal stop in broad daylight, but for Daniels, this was the beginning of the mistake that would end his career. Daniels adjusted his sunglasses and approached. The man rolled his window down smoothly, sunlight catching his calm, steady eyes. "Good afternoon, officer," he said politely. Daniels forced a nod. "License and registration." The man handed them over without hesitation. Name, Michael Harris. Local address, nothing odd, but his composure. It didn't feel right. Most drivers stuttered, sweated, apologized. "Not this guy, he was too." "Relaxed. Do you know why I stopped you?" Daniels asked. Michael's lips curved faintly. "No, officer, but I imagine you'll tell me." Not defensive, not worried. Almost amused, Daniels' gut tightened. Daniels adjusted his sunglasses and approached. The man rolled his window down smoothly, sunlight catching his calm, steady eyes. "Good afternoon, officer," he said politely. Daniels forced a nod. "License and registration." The man handed them over without hesitation. Name, Michael Harris. Local address. Nothing odd, but his composure. It didn't feel right. Most drivers stuttered, sweated, apologized. Not this guy. He was too relaxed. "Do you know why I stopped you?" Daniels asked. Michael's lips curved faintly. "No, officer, but I imagine you'll tell me." Not defensive, not worried, almost. Amused, Daniels' gut tightened asterisk. Back at the patrol car, Daniels ran the ID sleen. No priors. Still, his instincts buzzed. He waved his partner Blake over. "Guy checks out," Daniels muttered. "But I don't like him. He's too calm." Blake shrugged. "It's broad daylight. Families are walking by. Maybe just give him a warning." Daniels shook his head. "No, something's off. I can feel it." Back at the sedan, Daniels leaned on the window. "Mr. Harris, where are you headed this afternoon?" Michael tilted his head. "Just passing through." "That so? Got anything in the car? Luggage? Papers?" Michael's gaze sharpened. "Do I need to prove where I'm going, officer?" That tone, not arrogance. Not fear authority. Daniels clenched his jaw. "Step out of the vehicle," Daniels ordered. Michael didn't move. His voice was even. "On what grounds?" Daniels hesitated, then lied. "You match a description we got earlier." Michael finally unbuckled. Stepping out into the glaring sun, he was taller than expected, his movements slow, deliberate. "Go ahead," he said. "Check the car. Do what you think you need to." He leaned closer, voice low. "But remember, officer, everything you're doing right now is being watched." Daniels' stomach knotted, with kids riding bikes past and neighbors peeking from porches. Daniels searched the sedan glove box. Clean back seat. Nothing. Trunk. Empty. No drugs. No weapons. Nothing illegal. But Michael just stood there in the sun, arms folded, calm as stone asterisk. Daniels slammed the trunk. "This doesn't add up," he muttered. Michael's eyes narrowed. "Maybe it doesn't add up because you're asking the wrong questions." Daniels radioed dispatch. "Run Michael Harris again. Cross-check everything." "Static, then. Daniels, we've got nothing. No license, no address, no record." Daniels blinked. Impossible. He looked at the license in his hand and froze. The card was blank, white, no name. "No photo. What the hell?" he whispered. Michael leaned in, sunlight catching the faintest smile. "Now you're starting to see," Blake whispered nervously. "Daniels, who is this guy?" Michael reached into his jacket slowly. The officers tensed. Hands hovered over holsters, but Michael only pulled out a badge case. He flipped it open. The sun glinted off a federal insignia. Real. Unmistakable. "My name isn't Michael Harris," he said, "and this isn't just a traffic stop, Daniels." Throat went dry. "You're federal?" Michael nodded. "Deep cover. Ongoing investigation. And congratulations, officer. You just compromised months of work." Traffic slowed as curious drivers stared. Neighbors whispered from lawns. Michael's tone hardened. "Every word, every action you've taken today. Recorded." He tapped his smartwatch. A red light blinked. Fabrication. Harassment. Illegal search. Abuse of authority. All caught. Each word hit like a hammer. Daniel's face burned. In front of kids, parents, families. His authority was crumbling. Michael dialed his secure phone. "This is Falcon." Target confirmed. "Send the team." Within minutes, 2 black SUVs rolled up, engines rumbling. Men in suits stepped out. Broad daylight making their presence even more undeniable. Neighbors gasped. Phones came out, recording everything. Michael handed over the blank license. "Added to evidence," he ordered. Then, with a glance at Daniels and Blake, "You'll be hearing from Internal Affairs." The sedan pulled away under the bright sun, vanishing into traffic like nothing happened. But for Daniels, everything had changed. A week later, he sat in a sterile office. On the screen, the footage played back. His lies, his illegal search, his arrogance. Internal Affairs scribbled notes. He buried his face in his hands. All of it, in broad daylight, exposed. Public. Recorded forever. What began as the simplest traffic stop ended with his career in ruins, because sometimes the brightest light doesn't hide mistakes, it exposes them. And for Officer Daniels, daylight was his downfall. Clips of the incident hit social media within hours. Neighbors uploaded shaky phone videos. Daniels searching the car, Michael revealing the badge, SUVs rolling in. Hashtags trended by sunset. #Trafficstop exposed. Comments flooded in. Abuse of power in broad daylight. Imagine if he wasn't federal. He could have been another victim. The world was watching, and the department couldn't hide. Flashes popped. Reporters swarmed the station steps. The police chief, sweating under the sun, muttered carefully. "An internal review's underway." We take these allegations seriously. But the crowd wasn't buying it. Journalists pressed harder. "Why did your officer fabricate a story? Why is he still on the force?" The chief's silence spoke louder than his words. Daniels sat alone in his kitchen that night, curtains drawn, phone buzzing nonstop with threats and messages. His wife whispered. "What did you do?" he snapped. "I didn't know who he was." But deep down, he did know. He knew he crossed a line. And now the whole world knew, too. Officer Blake couldn't sleep. Unlike Daniels, he had tried to de-escalate. He'd warned against pushing too far. Guilt gnawed at him. If he spoke up, he'd destroy his partner. If he stayed silent, he'd destroy himself by dawn. He knew his silence wouldn't save anyone. In a windowless room, Michael, real name still classified, sat across from federal agents. "Your cover's blown," they told him. Michael's jaw tightened. "I knew the risks. But those officers exposed themselves more than me. Do we pursue them?" One agent asked. Michael's eyes darkened. "No, let the public do it." Sunlight is stronger than silence. A sterile interrogation room. 3 suits. A recorder on the table. "Officer Daniels," one began. "Why did you lie about the stop?" Daniels stammered, sweating. I thought he matched a suspect." "Based on what description?" Daniels had no answer. Silence. The pen scratched against paper. The weight of his career pressed down, Blake finally spoke. He walked into IA, voice shaking. "I need to come clean." It wasn't Michael Harris who was suspicious. It was Daniels. He escalated. He lied. He ordered the search. The investigators nodded slowly. Blake's testimony was the nail in the coffin. Daniels was no longer just suspended. He was done. Television anchors dissected every frame of footage. Experts debated. Police power families pointed to the video as proof. If he wasn't undercover, if he was just another man of color, would he even be alive? It wasn't just about Daniels anymore. It was about trust, about power, about daylight showing what darkness tried to hide. Summoned to a disciplinary board, Daniels listened as his charges were read. False report, unlawful search, abuse of authority. He tried to protest, but the evidence was undeniable. The verdict, termination. No badge, no pension for a man who once believed the uniform made him untouchable. Daylight stripped him. Bare weeks later, Michael stood quietly at a community meeting, not as an agent, not undercover, just a man. He faced the crowd. What happened wasn't about me. It was about what could happen to anyone. Abuse thrives in shadows, but when exposed to daylight, it dies. The room erupted in applause because the story wasn't about one traffic stop. It was about all of them. And as Michael walked away, the truth was clear. One man had turned a routine stop into a reckoning, and daylight made sure the world would never forget. Other officers in the precinct whispered in hallways. Some defended Daniels. Others distanced themselves. One thing was clear. If daylight could strip away a career so quickly, nobody's shield was safe anymore. Morning shows replayed the clips, pundits argued. Some claimed it was proof of systemic abuse. Others insisted it was just one bad stop. But every replay of Daniels' lie, every flash of Michael's badge, drove the point deeper. This wasn't isolated. It was a symptom. Daniels tried grocery shopping, cap pulled low, but whispers followed. That's the guy from the video. Parents pulled children closer. Cashiers went silent. For years, he commanded respect in uniform. Now, even out of it, all he carried was shame. Blake received a quiet knock at his door. It was Michael. No badge, no backup, just him. "You did the right thing," Michael said simply. Blake's shoulders sagged. "I betrayed a partner." "No," Michael corrected. "You betrayed silence. That takes more courage than loyalty ever could." In a secure briefing room, Michael debriefed senior agents' maps on the wall. Files stacked high. "This incident wasn't just exposure," one supervisor said. "It's leverage. Public anger gives us room to push reforms." Michael nodded. His mission had shifted from undercover surveillance to sparking real accountability. Daniels, stripped of his badge, sat with a lawyer. "Fight it," the lawyer urged. "Claim wrongful. Termination? Say you were following procedure." But Daniels stared at his calloused hands. He knew procedure wasn't the problem. He was at the town hall. Tensions boiled. Parents spoke of son stopped for fitting a description. Elders recalled decades of harassment. One teenager stood up, voice shaking but strong. If that man wasn't federal, he'd be in a cell, or worse. The crowd murmured in painful agreement. Two factions formed inside the police force, those who wanted transparency, and those who resented Michael for humiliating them. Memos leaked. Anonymous letters hit the press. The stop had lit a fire not just outside, but inside the walls of the department itself. Summoned before a civilian review. Bored? Blake swore, and every eye in the chamber burned into him. He told the truth. Every detail. The lie. The search. The badge. And when he finished, the room erupted. Some clapped. Others jeered. Truth, it seemed, was just as divisive as silence. Late at night, Daniels sat in his car outside the precinct, uniform folded in a box. Beside him, he thought of walking in, thought of apologizing, thought of ending it all, but instead, he just sat in the dark for the first time in years. Daniels felt powerless and human. Back at headquarters, Michael stared at the blank ID still sealed in an evidence bag. One piece of plastic had unraveled an entire system. He whispered to himself, "Not because of me, because of daylight." For him, the mission was no longer undercover. It was about being seen. Months later, Daniel's name appeared in the paper again, not as officer, not as defendant, just as a man who once wore the badge. And lost it, and Michael? He faded back into anonymity, exactly where federal agents lived best. But his words lingered in every meeting, every home, every whisper about trust. Abuse thrives in shadows. Daylight kills it. Months later, Daniel sat at the defense table, no badge, no authority. Just a suit that didn't fit right. He was charged not with brutality, but with falsifying reports. But the silence in the courtroom was heavier than any verdict. Every lie he wrote now stood against him like stacked bricks, crushing the man beneath. Prosecutor read from Daniels's past traffic stops. Patterns emerged. Suspicious drivers who turned out innocent, probable cause that never quite existed. Daniels shifted in his chair, sweat glistening. This wasn't just about Michael anymore. It was about a history he could no longer bury. Blake was called as a witness. He didn't gloat, didn't smirk. He spoke with a steady voice. Eyes on the judge. "I loved my job. But I couldn't keep quiet. If I had, more lives would have been ruined." For the first time, Daniels avoided Blake's eyes. Daniels wasn't sent to prison. Instead, he was sentenced to community service and barred from ever wearing a badge again. To him, it felt worse. Then a cell A uniform once gave him identity. Now, stripped of it, he was just another man in the crowd, unnoticed, unprotected, and forgotten. The department quietly reassigned Blake, but something had changed. Neighbors shook his hand, parents thanked him at school crossings to them. Blake wasn't just a cop, he was proof that conscience could survive in uniform, a rare badge people actually trusted. Michael's undercover mission officially closed, but before leaving town, he walked the same road where the stop first happened, Broad. Daylight cars passed. Normal life carried on. He paused, watching, reflecting. Sometimes the greatest missions weren't about arrests or indictments, but about forcing the world to look at itself. But in the weeks that followed, something shifted. The community that once lived in fear began to meet in open forums. Civilians joined oversight boards. People who never trusted the badge now demanded it change. The wound hadn't healed, but at least it wasn't hidden anymore. Years later, people would still whisper about the stop in broad daylight. Some called it a scandal. Others called it a turning point. But for those who lived it, it was something simpler, proof that truth doesn't hide forever. Because no matter how small a moment may seem, a single stop, a single lie, a single voice, it can shake the ground beneath an entire system. And all it takes is sunlight. After his sentencing, Daniels tried to rebuild quietly, but silence haunted him, louder than sirens ever had. The radio stayed off. The phone rarely rang. The man who once commanded fear now lived in obscurity, a shadow of the authority he once abused. One evening, Blake drove home in his patrol car. He passed the very corner where it all began. The sun was setting, golden light spilling across the road. For a moment, he slowed, staring. He realized he'd never see traffic stops the same way again. Every driver wasn't just a license plate. They were a story, someone's child, someone's hope, someone's future. Before leaving town for good, Michael wrote a letter, not to the department, not to the press. To Blake, it read only a few lines. "You prove that. Daylight doesn't need badges, only courage. Protect that. Don't lose it. M." Blake folded it carefully, placing it in his locker. Like a metal life resumed. Traffic lights changed, cars honked, people hurried to work. But under the surface, the city wasn't the same. Every stop carried weight. Every officer felt eyes on them. The ordinary had turned extraordinary, because one moment, one choice, had changed what people expected from justice. Years later, children who were too young to remember would ask their parents, "Why do people say daylight keeps us safe?" And their parents would tell them about the man stopped on a sunny afternoon, the badge that revealed a lie, and the truth that could no longer be buried. Because history isn't always written in wars or elections. Sometimes it's written in the middle of a street on an ordinary day, during what should have been an ordinary stop. And when the world asks what defeated the silence, the answer will always be the same. Daylight. In the end, it wasn't bullets, it wasn't force, it was truth, a single stop in broad daylight. Stripped away the lies and exposed the abuse of power. What began as suspicion ended as revelation. And the message is clear. Justice doesn't always hide in shadows. Sometimes it shines brightest in the open daylight, revealed everything. Daylight changed everything. If you like these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because the world needs more voices that refuse to stay silent.